Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. We have had quite a day today with Trump declaring Israel, or Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. And I got an email from somebody who said, well, Jerusalem's been the capital of Israel, for the last 50 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, actually, Israel has been the capital, or Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel ever since time began, essentially, because that is where God said, that's my city. And anyway, hi, Larry. Glad you could make it.
Hey, Stuart. Thanks for having me. A lot of things going on these days.
What's your take on all this? I think this is a very momentous movement on the part of Donald Trump, and that it has far-reaching ramifications that the world's not going to see immediately, but in the very near future. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very interesting. When we had the cosmic star sign, if you will, a lot of people kind of poo-pooed everything because there wasn't a pivot right on that date of that star sign. And, we said that, the Creator pretty much works with us in seasons, not necessarily a specific date. But, of course, you and I agreed that star sign was what it said. It was a sign, just a sign that we had entered the season of the pivot, if you will, back towards the Middle East and Jerusalem and Israel. And I think that's what we saw. As a matter of fact, when I saw Trump give the speech he gave this morning, about noon today, actually, I had cold chills running up and down my spine. I mean, it was just absolutely historic. I was actually ecstatic, and I know a lot of people may not appreciate that, but, it was a very telling historical moment as far as I was concerned, and actually biblically prophetic.
Yes, I had, it was a combination of great joy when I heard Trump do that, but also a time of sorrow for the rest of the world, because I don't think they understand what actually went down today and what's coming before the end of December is up. I think we are at that pivot. In fact, that pivot probably took place today. And now all eyes are going to be on Jerusalem. And as Zechariah said, Jerusalem will be a cup of trembling for the entire world, and all the nations that come against it are going to be broken. So we are really watching a prophetic fulfillment, I believe, and further confirmation that Trump truly is a Cyrus. What say you?
Oh, I think, Stuart, this was literally a sign, an absolute sign for those that I guess you could call unbelievers, or those who did not believe at all in Osiris, or even the Creator, sending Osiris. I think this is an absolute sign they just simply can't throw into the trash that he is. He is Cyrus. He is sent here for a purpose. He actually opened a window of time, and he is holding his foot in the door during the pivot.
Yeah, and now you can't always trust what Sorcher Fall says. I guess we know that. But there was a report, I believe it was from her, that Trump had a discussion with Putin. And what he told Putin was, either God wins or I die. Which is almost like, if it's true, Trump had to do what he had to do. And that's why God picked him, because he knew he would do it. he would go against everything and accomplish this move. And a lot of people poo-poo it. Oh, Jerusalem's been the capital of Israel forever, so what are you getting all excited about? You know, Israel can claim that Jerusalem is the capital all they want. But if the people of the world and the nations of the world do not agree with it, then she isn't from a worldly perspective. And that's changed now with Trump doing what he did. And I just think we're on a collision course. The UN has been issuing all these absolutely foolish, I don't know what you call them, edicts about Israel, and I guess they've got a whole bunch more they're going to come out with. And, of course, Trump, I think, realized that nothing had been done keeping the status quo. I think he realizes that the Palestinians, Hamas, and all that, despite all their rhetoric, want Israel totally destroyed and put into the sea. I think that's, what is that, Psalm 83 or something like that, where it talks about that. And that's an attitude. And their attitude is, we hate Israel, we want Israel totally destroyed, and here comes Trump, and like he said, Israel is a bona fide nation and has a right to select wherever it wants its capital to be. And, of course, the UN says, no, 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 this is going to be an international capital of the world. And this throws a monkey wrench in their plans. Now, I haven't read what he actually said, but if he said that Jerusalem will be the eternal capital of Israel, then he has, well, actually he did throw an axe right into the UN, basically, by doing this. What do you think the UN's position is now going to be? They've got a problem now.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I was listening on Fox News this evening, right after the event where Trump actually made the guarantee and signed the decree saying that Jerusalem was Israel's capital, and that he was starting the process to move the embassy, the U.S. embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And after that, Ambassador John Bolton came on to Fox, and he actually said kind of what you were indicating there. He's actually said that President Donald Trump had just negated the so-called decree of the New World Order and the Pope and the deep state that had pretty much declared and cornered Israel's position that they were going to institute Jerusalem being an international city instead of under any control at all of Israel. So John Bolton has said that actually Trump's move negated that decision, by the UN to do an international deal with that city. So that, he's in direct conflict with all the powers that be of this planet right at the moment, and apparently, I would have to say sent by God as Cyrus to do exactly what he did. And I've been concerned, Stuart, and I've shared with you that I was very concerned that if Trump didn't soon initiate that agreement or that decision that he had made early on in his campaign, actually, that I was very concerned he wouldn't be in office much longer. So what do you think?
Well, I think this is what's going to happen. This is just my own take, and hopefully I'm very wrong, that this is going to lead to war, and I guess the deal with North Korea is really heating up. Trump will be blamed for it, all of it. They'll get rid of him, and Obama, the great peacemaker, will somehow come back in power. I don't think Trump has much longer to be in office. I just have that feeling where, we're coming up on a major holiday for Israel called Hanukkah, which is actually the Festival of Lights, is what one of the things is called, or the Festival of the Dedication, et cetera, et cetera. But this has always been kind of a, how do I say, bad time for the world and for Israel. You may remember that on the 4th and 20th day of the 9th month, that the Lord would shake the nations. Well, that's exactly the day that Allenby retook Jerusalem in 1917. Well, exactly 100 years later, what do we have? Now we have Donald Trump effectively setting Jerusalem and Israel apart from the rest of the world and recognizing it for what it truly is and always has been. And I think if that comment that he made with Putin, if that's really true, Donald was between a rock and a hard place and had to make a choice. I'm either going to obey God or I'm going to listen to all the people that hate Israel in the first place. And he chose to obey God. Now, the problem is that the end of his job, so to speak? And will he now be removed, or is there more to it? I think there's a little more to it. I think the embassy has to be moved, and then I think the temple situation is coming up. We have the Sanhedrin. They're ready to go, basically. And this is a pivot into Daniel's 70th week, folks. We're watching that final time just before we enter the Great Tribulation period, or tribulation period, whatever you want to call it. What do you think, Larry? I just think we're right there. This is the pivot, which we often thought that 2017, 2018 was the pivot year.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the rest of the world is not listening to the fact that what this really means for the world. You know, I think that the powers that be on this planet seem to think that they basically have a short time to get things back under their control again, not realizing that once this pivot, once prophecy is fulfilled, once these things happen, that there's no turning back. And I just don't believe that they're looking at a not turning back situation. I find it interesting, too. There's still a lot of people wondering about Obama. Matter of fact, let me read you something real quick here. I'll be quick.
Yeah,
Barry Rothman has a new Torah code out that he did on November the 29th, 2017, an update code. And he says, history will show World War III started on July the 14th, 2015, under Barack Hussein Obama. And let me read the wording in this code real quick.
Okay.
Number 1, Obama is a traitor. War, Iran, the murderer he shall surely be put to death. Israel, you have rebelled against the Lord. From the day that I knew you, I will blot out man whom I created from the face of the earth. And that's a new code that right at around the 1st of December that Barry found involving Obama. And I find it telling, Stuart, nobody really knows who Obama is. Matter of fact, when you say Barry Soetoro, most people don't even know who that is. And then Obama is still shadowing President Donald Trump in all of his overseas tours. Obama is right in the background, hiding in the shadows, waiting.
Yes, that's what bothers me. I think Trump, it could go to the point where he brings the embassy in, and remember the letters that Putin and Trump got on the Sanhedrin and bringing that up to power. So obviously then with all of this coming down, we have to be at the very edge of Daniel's 70th week. And what's interesting is somebody pointed out that from the eclipse on 8/21 Now, you got to remember what an eclipse is. It means that it's not a partial eclipse. This was a total eclipse. It went across the United States, and it blocks out all light. Now, Jesus said he was the light of the world. So I think that's a great reference to a huge, downfall of the American people's spirit, and now the gross darkness that covers the people is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And what's interesting, though, 120 days later, after that eclipse, is the seventh day of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is called also the Feast of Lights, or Festival of Lights, Feast of Dedication, etc., etc. But what's interesting is the eclipse is the total absence of light, whereas this Hanukkah series is called the Festival of Lights, and it's the only feast that Jesus went to openly. Didn't try to hide who he was, but openly went there. And that's where the Sanhedrin and the Jewish leaders confronted him. Well, why don't you tell us who you are? Why don't you be plain and state it right out? And he did. I and my Father are one, claiming he's the Messiah. Well, of course, that went over like a ton of bricks, and he ended up on the cross for saying that, basically. But he was openly declaring who he really was on a Hanukkah. Why is it that we have on the seventh day of Hanukkah, which is a very interesting number, coming up on the end of Hanukkah, actually, the eighth day is the end, and that is the 21st of December. And remember how the Mayans talked about December 21st. They said 2012, but there's been a delay, and it's been a 5-year delay, and 5 is a number of grace. And remember the 2-day sandstorm they had in Israel that delayed everything for 2 years. If you look at all of this and all of the numbers, like we're now at the 70th year for Israel, since 1947. So when you look at all of these numbers and everything in the star sign, like you were talking about, the 923 star sign, then we had the eclipse before that. We had the 4 blood red moons, and we had those comets coming across Satan's head 1 year apart, forming a perfect cross over Satan's head. There's something really going on here, and this 120 days may be very significant, not only to the world, but to the church itself. And you don't know whether this is a sign of a possible rapture event or not, but it could be. But we know for sure it's a pivot point into Daniel's 70th week. What do you think?
Yeah, I find that really interesting. Everything you've said, especially the 70 years, and when we find ourselves in that. And here's the Drudge headlines for today. And December the 6th says Trump recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital, will move embassy, and also says 58 House Democrats vote to impeach Trump. And, of course, we know that failed today. Los Angeles on fire, wildfires across Southern California. I mean, we've got troubles. We've got a lot of troubles, and kind of what you're suggesting is, as this pivot occurs, we may see a lot more troubles than that.
Oh, we're going to see lots of trouble. I think America is going down. I know a lot of people don't like to see that, but America is Babylon the Great. There's no way you can get around it. You may deny it, you may laugh at it, mock at it, and say, well, I'm nuts. No, the Lord has given well over 140 stated parameters as to who this mystery Babylon is. And there's two parts to it. There is the physical Babylon, and then there is the spiritual Babylon. We are, the United States of America is, without any question whatever, no matter who laughs at it or mocks it, absolutely is Babylon the Great. You can't misinterpret it if you look at all of the statements that the Lord made about it. And Babylon comes under severe judgment. If you go into Jeremiah, it's kind of interesting. I'll see if I can find it. I got some stuff here. But anyway, what it was that, remember that the Jews were in Babylon, ancient Babylon, for 70 years. And Cyrus came along and told them to go back to Israel. Well, there is a statement very similar to that about Trump being Cyrus. But one thing that it said that after the 70 years and the Jews were returned, Cyrus was going to deal with Babylon. And what did we say about Trump? We said he could be very well Cyrus. Now I think it's proven. But he's also judgment, because Cyrus did judgment against Babylon. He really did. So here we are at that time of the 70 years, and I think all of this was done by the numbers. Trump picked today and the 70 years on purpose to do this. So fulfilling ancient prophecy and modern prophecy as to who we really are and what's really happening. What do you think? And like you said, the fire, those fires there. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention when you finish there that, it's incredible. Matter of fact, that Donald Trump is the 45th president of the United States. And if you read Isaiah 45, it clearly indicates Cyrus and Babylon. And,
yes.
Of course, it ties in Israel, and it's where Cyrus made the move to actually pivot the captives back to Israel or Jerusalem to fulfill prophecy. So here we are again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've been told in the heavens. We've been told by the signs on earth. We've been told a lot of stuff by the Lord. And more of these pastors are coming out and saying that the church is asleep. And it doesn't appear like anything can wake them up as to the lateness of the hour. But we are at the end of things, folks. You can't have a pivot like this back to Israel, where Israel becomes a cup of trembling in Zechariah, which is exactly what's going to happen now. And it's amazing what Trump is accomplishing. And now we got this North Korean thing, which apparently is really heating up. Have you heard any more about that?
Well, what I've heard about that today, matter of fact, is the UN envoy, that special envoy at the UN, which is an American, has arrived now in North Korea. We don't know what that's about. We don't know what is going to be discussed. But we do know that for the first time ever, that as we sent we've had 3 carrier groups off the peninsula there in Korea. China, for the first time, has now brought their warplanes out and covered the coast of North Korea. And there are reports on Fox that the president has withdrawn the 3 carrier groups away from the Korean peninsula. And at the same time, one of our B-1 bombers couldn't fly. We sent one along with fighters over the Korean peninsula, and it had trouble it had to go land because it wasn't able to fly much longer either. We're in trouble. And at the same time as that, Stuart, I'll just add this little note that there's now been an official request for American evacuation from the peninsula, South Korea. So, this is heating up, and it's all occurring about the same time as what's happening in the Middle East.
Yeah, and then we've got Iran, and aren't they pushing more and more troops into Syria, and Lebanon, and that area?
Yeah, absolutely. And matter of fact, the guy that wrote the little snippet or the video that said that Israel had attacked Iran and within Syria again, he was exactly right. It proved right in about a week. And I heard that now it's been reported we've struck again in Syria. The Israelis have against an Iranian positions, and satellite images are showing some Iranian bases have been destroyed. This is ongoing. Israel is using not only their warplanes, but they're using missile fire now. And, Israel also, just before this Donald Trump situation or event that occurred today, they were expecting an attack from three directions and had deployed their police forces and the military already. So this is all, it's all in play at the moment.
Wow. So I guess we could say that we're on the brink of war in the Korean area in Iran. If they start squeezing Iran, that'll bring us to Daniel 8. So it's kind of interesting whether we see the Daniel 8 or Isaiah 17, which I think both of them are precede the Ezekiel 38, 39, and the demise of the United States, by the way, is in Ezekiel 38, 39, if you know what to look for. It's right there. It's in plain sight, actually, that we are going to be destroyed. So when you see Putin and his gang come down upon the mountains of Israel, we probably have maybe a couple days or weeks before we are absolutely just taken out. And who knows what Kimmy Boy is going to do. Maybe launch something towards Guam or Hawaii. And as I understand it, Hawaii is still practicing these drills for a nuclear attack.
Yeah, they are doing the old Cold War drills with the sirens and giving their people notice and practicing what they call nuclear war drills.
Yeah, we're in trouble, folks. The United States, if you read the prophecies, goes down hard when it goes. And I do believe our military is going to suffer some severe losses when we get into a skirmish, especially if we do it over there in Korea. But we're spread too thin, don't you think, Larry? I think that's the whole idea, is spread America out too thin where she just can't operate properly.
Oh, I think you're exactly right, and I think Obama spent 8 years working on that.
Yeah, I think Obama is going to be proven to be the greatest traitor that the American people have ever had, although we've had quite a few of them. And deep state is starting to be upset over Trump's initiative of the counter coup. So this is going to get very, very interesting. Remember what Jeremiah said, ruler against ruler, authority against authority, and it is in full swing right now with everything that's going on. Got about 30 seconds left. Thanks for coming on, Larry. Really appreciate it. We'll try and get something really put together for Friday. The ramifications of this are going to be far more reaching than people realize. What do you think?
Oh, I think you're exactly right. And actually the Torah code, Barry Rothman, Torah code indicates Obama is a traitor, just like you said, and that was written many years ago. Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Heads up, we are heading into a very rough December. So take care, everyone, and good night.